Hello, New Zealand. Happy New Year. It is 2026, and Simon and I are still here rearing for another year to go. How are you, Simon? Happy New Year.
Been a long time between courses, if you will, but no, it's nice to be back.
Okay, very good. And look, I did want to just remind people that you can watch us all over the social media. We are everywhere. Look, we're live streaming to Blue Sky, which is kind of this far left little platform where all the people who didn't like Twitter being an open speech platform, they've all gone off to Blue Sky. So we're broadcasting there just to wind them up. Threads as well. We're on X. We're on Substack. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. What did I miss? YouTube, of course. And if you want to comment, Threads, and if you do want to comment, Threads is another interesting one. There's kind of these social media platforms that I don't actually know how they're surviving. Anyway, if you do want to comment so that we can see your comments, please go to YouTube or go to the Family First Facebook page. And as soon as Gordon turns it on, I'll be able to actually see the comments coming through. We can tell it's the start of the year because our technical director has just remembered that we've got to get the comments coming through. So I'll give him a hard time about that. Look, let's get straight into it. And a couple of things that just want to highlight. Firstly, the image of the year. And the image of the year is this one. Back to you, Gordon. The image of the year is the general election, 7th of November. So it has been named. And look, Simon, from experience, given that you've campaigned in, 5 elections, does that announcement of the date, is that nice to know, or is that kind of like the start of panic period?
It's a both of each. God, we've been away so long, even my English is now failing me. It's a bit of both. It's nice to know the date because you can begin planning. There's so many rules around what you can and cannot do, particularly 3 months before. So in other words, it's great for planning. The MPs will like that. They know when Parliament will end. Brilliant.
Yep.
But the other side too is once it's set, it's like the starter's gun going off in the race. And so it's all on. And, talking to different MPs already from across the spectrum, they're already tired and it's only February.
Obviously didn't get the holiday they needed. The video of the week was just a very funny quote that I heard from Chris Hipkins, and he was talking about itches and that Winston Peters knew exactly where those itches were. It was just very funny.
Winston Peters is very good at scratching every populist itch that he can find, and it's clear that there is, there are quite a few itches out there to scratch.
Anyway, obviously he had a lot of mosquitoes wherever he was camping during January or something like that. We will come back to mosquitoes because I actually think they deserve human rights based on the logic of the Greens. But look, let's just firstly have a look at the polls. And there were 2 polls sort of over January that I think we should just have a quick look at. The Courier Market Research poll, which wasn't super different. There was a little, this one's just come out, a little bit of a kick there for the green line down the bottom, which is the Green Party. So they'll be happy about that because they were sort of dropping a bit. You got to look at the general trend. The very bottom line is Te Pāti Māori continue to decline with all the infighting, and we'll come back to that as well. Labour slightly ahead of National up the top there. And then there was the poll from, this is the freshwater poll that the Dominion Post, the Post does. They call themselves now. And once again, sort of a similar trend. What I do find interesting, Simon, just before you comment, is that New Zealand First is out polling ACT, which is quite different to the election result, where I think, what was it? New Zealand First was about 6 or 7, and ACT were around 10. I think I'll look that up while you comment on this. But what's your general take on these polls?
I think they're becoming relatively accurate. Look, I am someone who believes the only real poll that counts is election day, and I've never lost sleep over any poll in my entire political career, whether good or bad. But as commentators, as we are, Bob, you can look at them now and go, actually, we've had months of relative consistent polls and trends. I think the key takeaways, this is going to be very tight. I still think you'll see the coalition, so that's the centre-right, return to power because overall they've got enough of the vote, I think. But it will still be very, very tight. I think what's interesting is Winston does have a bit of momentum, and maybe we'll talk about that a bit later, but they've got a bit of momentum. They're touching on topics like today. They just announced the referendum on Māori seats. Should we keep them or not? Axe, for me, has gone a bit off the boil. They're not really saying much. Maybe they're planning their time. And then for the centre-left, it's still going to be tight, but Te Pāti Māori is the real wild card. And as we've discussed before, if Labour says they're going to go with Te Pāti Māori, I think a lot of Kiwis will go, we're not having a bar of this.
No.
But if they don't go with them, then Labour doesn't really have a path to power. So it looks going to be fascinating.
Yeah. Okay. People are on a roll. They've obviously been dying just to make their comments. Rosie says, message for Chippy, Winston won't be scratching your itch after the election. We will come back to that particular point. And Hayden says, should take a look at the latest Roy Morgan poll that came out a week. Actually, I'm just having a look at it now, and it is a week old. Actually, I don't know if I saw this one come out, but it actually showed that National Act New Zealand First are on 52, up 1.5 points, and the Labour Greens Māori are down 3%. So maybe that's why I didn't see it reported, actually. That's an interesting one. So it is sort of swapping around, but I think we can safely say that it is a two-horse race. But the thing that people have to understand is that Labour and Greens will not get across the line without the shenanigans and the chaos of Te Pāti Māori, and that should scare the left, shouldn't it?
It does scare the left. It's a big issue. You saw at Waitangi, actually, some of the discussion and debate there. It's partly probably contributing to why the likes of Penny Harare have left. You've got Chris Hipkins saying, look, we haven't made a decision. I apologise, I don't remember her name, but she's the new MP for Ikiroa Rafati, replaced Adrian Rurawhe. Long and short, a Labour MP. Yeah, no, that's the Te Pāti Māori. So, no, this is when Adrian Rurawhe, so long-time Labour MP, former Speaker of the House, he's left Parliament. So there's a new, long and short, she's saying, look, we can work with the Māori Party. Willie Jackson's iffing, Chris is not sure. So it's really mixed messaging and showing that there's a lot of confusion. But the key point for people, I would suggest, is obviously National and Labour neck and neck, or Labour just ahead, National just ahead. You've got to step back and look at the coalition parties. And at the moment, the centre-right has the more certain path to power. I'm not saying it's a dead certainty, but ACT, New Zealand First, National together. So that's actually a really, if I might, that's a really good image there. People go, oh, Labour's ahead. Yeah, they are. But Labour, Greens and Te Pāti Māori don't get them there. National New Zealand First, Greens does. Greens, ACT does.
Yeah. Okay, and you were talking about, just segueing into that he did retire from politics, seemed one of the nicer guys, and actually I checked some of his voting record, voted against abortion and euthanasia and Easter trading, so he had some good voting there, but he's been replaced by none other than Georgie Danzy, who's does a bit of moonlighting, drag queening, or drag kinging, is it? Or drag queening? Drag kinging. Yeah, so Peter Pansy. So, that's an interesting replacement. Just when everybody wasn't missing Benjamin Doyle from the Green Party, in comes Georgie Danzy. I was interested that the media, during January, especially Stuff, continued their campaign aimed at Luxon. And I just don't remember this kind of campaign constantly at Jacinda. I remember it against John Key and whoever was the leader of the National Party. And so they did this mood of the workforce, which was a CTU poll, a union-based poll. So what do you expect from them? And there was also this, Christopher Luxon hits lowest popularity in past year. Well, the fact of the matter is he's, on the One News poll, for example, he's still out polling Chris Hipkins. And at the end of the day, the poll that makes the most difference is whether National gets in. I remember, just before you comment on that, I remember when Helen Clark was incredibly low in personal favour as opposition leader, and yet Labour eventually got elected. So look, it's an indicator. But look, what's your overall take on that? Do you think the media are really gunning for Luxon? I'd love to see him rolled.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I mean, look, Luxon, he's not the cause of this per se. His performance, he'd probably say himself, hasn't been that great. Yeah, there's some grounds for being dissatisfied with the leadership, but, and a really important but, the media are barreling on in every opportunity they can to put the boot in, to belittle him, to make him look silly, and to try and keep reminding people that he's unpopular, despite, as you say, actually, his approval ratings are relatively steady. Jim Bolger, I've mentioned this before, Jim Bolger wasn't very particular, but took National to a stunning victory in the 90s. So, it's the party vote, but you're dead right. I mean, that workforce survey, I saw the headlines, I was like, oh, gosh. But then as I started reading, I was like, oh, hold on, these are the union. Of course they're going to put the boot into the leader of the National Party.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody's just laughing at the name Peter Pansy of the of the new Labour MP. I mean, it's either Labour or Greens. It really has to happen there. And I will come back to the Greens, but we were going to do a little roundup of all the political parties and just where they're at. National, we've just covered. Look, in terms of Labour, I do think that the resignation of Peeni Henare, who was a senior MP, and so surprising when it happened at Waitangi weekend, when Luxon was preaching this message, Hipkins was preaching a message of unity amongst the parties, that came across really badly, didn't it? To have a senior MP like that resign. Did that ever happen during your time, where a senior member of the political party blindsided the leader like that?
I don't recall it. I know after the Todd Muller coup, once that imploded 53 days later, there was a relatively swift departure. Nikki Kay, Amy Adams, for example. So there was a fairly quick leaving. I think the distinction is more, have you let the party leadership know? Look, politicians don't like surprises. And it was clear that while Chris Hipkins had some indications it was coming, he didn't anticipate it right then. And you could see in his press stand-up when they were grilling him that he was very, not quite a seething anger, but he was not a happy camper. And, he's allowed to be angry. There's clearly tensions in the Labour Party. And it's not going to get any better as the likes of Kieran McNulty still has his ambitions. I see Michael Wood is pushing hard, or maybe he's already been selected as the candidate from Mount Roskill. He's got leadership ambitions, and from the far left of the party, so there's going to be real tensions increasing there. And election years just make them even more so.
I did see that there was some discussion around possibility that Peeni Henare was going to go across to New Zealand first, follow Shane Jones across maybe. Although I did hear him make this comment up at Waitangi.
For me, Labour gave me my opportunity, and I'll continue to support what they offer for our people.
Okay, so it seems pretty clear. He's basically saying Labour. So if he was to suddenly say, okay, actually I'm switching to New Zealand first, as the rumour mill has suggested, that statement wouldn't go down too well. He's basically misled the people. Do you think there's any truth to the rumour?
I don't think so. Up until I heard him speak up there in Waitangi, like you had heard the rumours and thought that could be possible. But yeah, he was quite emphatic in those statements, including as well, he seemed very tired. He wants to give politics a rest. There's always wiggle room, Bob. If in a month's time he said, well, I thought about it, but I had a chat with Winston and X and Y and Z, there's always wiggle room. But at this moment, and I used to work with Peeni actually at the Ministry of Social Development, know him well before politics. He's straight up and honest. So at this time, I think he's quite truthful. He's willing to take a break, and he'll still support Labour quietly in the background.
Okay, just before we move on to the Greens, just the one thing with National, which is the big news that was breaking sort of today, that the media were all over, is that the Nicola Willis, the finance minister, wants to have this independent review into the way we spent money like a drunken sailor during COVID, and basically, we're going to be paying it off for the rest of our lives, or feels like it. Look, I think the review is warranted. Do you think the timing is suspicious? I think Chloe said it was sus. Which typical green talk, sus, all the short names, but do you think that the timing is interesting? I mean, I think we should definitely have the investigation, no doubt about it. But why didn't they talk about it earlier?
Yeah, I don't think the optics are great, for the reasons that actually I sort of find myself agreeing with Chloe. I think I don't put the conspiracy as deeply as she will. This could be just straight up what it is, but it does look to a lot of people, or it could be perceived by many, very suspicious to hold an inquiry into what the previous government did, so that during election year you can put the boot into them, because undoubtedly the review will question elements of the COVID response. And like you, Bob, I think it's a great idea. The Reserve Bank is independent. It should be re-looking at its decisions and learn from them. But yeah, you'd have to be a little bit cynical and go, interesting that it's now this year to provide the now government ammunition to fire at Labor, who was, of course, in charge during those terrible COVID days.
Okay, I'm still looking at the Greens, and obviously, Chris Hipkins wanted to present this lovely picture, and they all went up to Waitangi, and the United picture, although it seemed to be undermined by the fact that Te Pāti Māori wasn't part of this beautiful arrangement, and they do need the Te Pāti Māori to get across the line, as the polls say. Of course, the latest story, Centrist reported this, is that bit of a stink down in Wellington, literally. In fact, I think I was telling you the story. I came out of the Supreme Court during the case against Family First for deregistration. And I remember walking down the street with our lawyers, and there was literally sewage going down the drains of the main street outside the Supreme Court there, which I thought was, very symbolic in some ways of what we were tackling. But there's this claim that there was a voting council, and there was some budget that was going towards cycleways, and there was some budget going towards fixing the sewerage. And the sewerage got the thumbs down, but the cycleway got the thumbs up. And we're talking about hundreds of millions. Is there some relevance to that? I mean, do you think that's a fair argument to say, hey, council got their priorities wrong, and now council are in the stink, literally and figuratively, because they were so obsessed with cycleways?
Absolutely, and without doubt. I think not just sort of the Green councillors like Tamitha Paul at the time, but the Wellington Council in its entirety. It's something that I follow because I have an apartment in Wellington, so I'm a ratepayer there, so I follow it closely. It is a priority question, and I think, unfortunately, Bob, there'll be listeners and viewers tonight in other parts of the country going, well, we've got the same problem. I mean, you and I are in Auckland. I look at times at the council's decisions, and they seem to be able to find enormous amounts of funds for, I don't know, various marches and parades and activities, and yet still not enough money for all the basics. So in the Wellington case, pipes are underground, you can't see them, and they just hope they'll last a bit longer, but they don't, because also I remember all the water pipes keep breaking. It's a major problem, and I just want to underline as well, if I could, this underground infrastructure, water and waste, almost all across the country. We are talking like hundreds of billions of dollars to fix it, and councils and governments over many years, many decades have neglected it, and the cost is getting worse and worse. But Tamitha has been well caught out, yes, prioritising nice to haves like cycle lanes rather than sewers. So she should actually be held to account for her decision making.
Okay. The interesting thing was that on the Herald Now, the morning show, the guy, I'm trying to remember his first name, Bridges.
Ryan
Right, thank you, Ryan. He actually did tackle her on this question. Have a watch.
This argument of what's more important, cycleways or pipes, is just a stupid argument, because that's not the way that councils make decisions. Not any council around the country at all, period.
They do. That is fundamentally what they do. They make decisions about priorities. You don't have infinite money. Unless You charge
Right.
ratepayers like wounded bulls. You don't have infinite money, so you need to prioritise what you're spending money on. That's why I'm trying to ask the question, to get an idea of what is the list of priorities.
And you saw at that meeting what the list of priorities were. When we made each of those decisions, it wasn't a question of, is this thing taking away from another thing? It was, do we want to fund these things and can they be delivered? And the reason that cycleways are important is because, one, they make the roads wider and more accessible for buses, but also they protect people from being hit by cars.
I never knew cycleways were to protect me from buses.
Totally. Look, I'm pleased you played that. Just totally deluded. Even before we get to the cycleways, the idea that you don't prioritise, you have to prioritise. I mean, Ryan's completely correct. There isn't infinite money. Councils have to choose. And if you choose A, you won't have enough money for B. So she's in an economic la-la land that somehow you can just have it all. But this is the lack of economic knowledge which the Greens bring. I mean, it's really deeply stupid, to use her word. And I don't know about you, Bob, but I'm pretty confident the listeners will back me up that when they put in cycleways, the roads get thinner. Certainly around where I live, lots of cycleways that actually a lot of streets now, you can't have cars going together because it clogs things up. Absolutely nuts. She's just full of it.
Okay, what's those things they call the concrete little dividers? Tim Tams, or no? There's another name for them or something.
Yeah, some of them would call them Tim Tams or.
Yeah. Okay, I don't think we'll get much. I don't think we'll get any sense out of the Greens, especially after their more recent announcement. And this comes back to my mosquito point, because one of the Green MPs has lodged a private member's bill. We've got the rivers and the mountains having basically human rights recognised as legal persons. We're now having the whale. I mean, I want to know, why not mosquitoes? Why don't they have legal person rights as well? And look, this is the same party that is happy for abortion up to birth, and the unborn child doesn't have any legal rights. So, yeah, do we expect anything common sense out of the Greens at times?
Sadly not. Not the modern Greens. The Greens that I once knew, I mean, I didn't fully agree with them, otherwise I would have joined the Green Party, but environmentally focused, this is a virtue signalling. It's not sensible. It doesn't make sense even in its own right of how this would operate. And as you say, these are people who gleefully, I want to underline that word, gleefully vote for killing the unborn, and yet a whale is to have a lot more rights than them. In fact, if you delve into the bill, there's about 5 points. I won't bore you with it, but it's phenomenal, the rights that whales would be given. I think even some of us humans might like some of them. So again, it's just this huge virtue signal, but it's not going to help them, because this is really just pitching to their base. But maybe they have to shore that up at the moment. I don't know, shoring it up in Wales is a bad pun, but anyway, it's my best attempt for tonight.
Yeah,
and I'll stop blathering on.
Yeah, it would give Wales inherent rights, including the right to freedom of movement. I mean, we're actually restricted sometimes. There are some no-go zones, like women's changing rooms, by the way. You can't go in there. So you don't have a right to freedom of movement, which they want to give Wales. A healthy environment. Oh, they're going to have to get rid of all that high-sugar food and those fast food takeaways. And the ability to thrive alongside humanity. I would like to thrive alongside those sharks that were swimming past me at the beach at the weekend. I would really like to thrive against them, so maybe I'll get a bill on that. Anyway, yeah, it's hard to take serious. Anyway, let's move on.
You can see how they... So I was just going to say, you can see how they're misusing the whales to actually push their agendas, because if you got those through, you just read 3 of them, you can't have the offshore rigs, you're getting in the way of the whales. Oh, no, you can't do this new waste treatment plant because actually it's impacting the spirit of the whale. It's just... In some ways, they're misusing whales, which might sound like a strange thing for me to say. But anyway, we should move on.
Okay, I don't know why the Welsh get all the preference and not the Irish. Anyway, people from Wales, ka-ching. That was a dad joke. Let's move on to ACT. Look, to be honest, they haven't really been in the news. Obviously, David Seymour got shouted down at Waitangi, which just sort of shows bad behaviour and a lack of respect on behalf of those who were doing that. But the only thing they're sort of talking about a lot is the treaty's principle bill. And I sort of think, look, I don't know if that's very good marketing. When you've had something that's caused a massive furor, it's been voted down, do you regurgitate that, or do you repackage it, remarket it, think about what was the weaknesses and strengths, and have another go? Are they marketing wrong?
My sense is they are a little bit like the Greens in Wales. Act returning to the Treaty Principles Bill will certainly make their people happy. But the key with political parties is you want to extend your influence. And when it comes to the Treaty Principles Bill, I think, actually, regardless of what people think of it, whether they like it or not, it sort of did its dash. It's quite emotional, quite exhausting. I don't think a lot of people are going to want to return to the topic. It's like, oh gosh, let's just give it a break. And I think you're right. It's probably about repackaging it. I mean, I wouldn't discount ACT. There's a long way to go. They might just be pondering their options, but I have been surprised at the lack of momentum, the lack of any policy. I mean, you started with the referendum. We talked very briefly, Winston, and the referendum on Maori seats. I mean, that's an ACT part policy too, and they've been gazumped there. So, yeah, something's not quite right.
Okay, New Zealand first. Now, look, I guess the big question is everyone's asking, will New Zealand first go with Hipkins? Winston says, no, he's not going to go with Labour while Hipkins leads, but then he's sort of said more broadly that he's not going to go with Labour. He really needs to make that known, because that's a major condition for a number of the votes that he would receive, wouldn't it be?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say this, but you can't trust Winston. That's my basic position. A lot of what New Zealand First is doing and saying, I really like. And, Ashley Church recently did actually quite a good piece talking around how a lot of, what would have been traditional national values and policies are now in New Zealand First. And so I can recognize that. And while I like Winston, I think he's quite the character. I think he's very astute. He has history. He has form of switching, of hedging his bets. Now, I think it's very unlikely that he's going to go with Labour, but I don't think it's completely off the table. And he will delight in being asked all through the election what he's going to do, because it keeps him front and centre of the cameras. And as he sort of, is a bit coy, that's great for him. Again, he keeps getting coverage. But it's just that lingering part of me, Bob, and maybe I'm emotionally compromised from 2017, but I remember what happened there, and he put Jacinda into government. So unlikely, but not impossible.
Okay, I'll tell you one party that he's clearly not going to go with. Can you guess what it is?
What about your support partners that you might work with after the election? You've rolled out Te Pāti Māori, so you wouldn't join a coalition with a party or a government that was being propped up on confidence and supply by Te Pāti Māori. Same goes for the Greens.
Pāti Māori is based on race, and if this country needs to go ahead doing one thing, we need to be one people, one country, one nation. We've all got different cultures, we've got different backgrounds, we've got different DNA, but that's not how you build nationhood. And so, no, we're not going to deal with a bunch of racists who are so bad they actually say about some of us who have Maori in our background and our DNA that we haven't got the right blood quantum. You could not be more racist and arrogant than that, and thank heavens the Maori people have discovered just what a sham the Maori Party is. They're getting far more support from you people and your commentariat than they're getting from the ordinary Maori.
Okay, well, that makes that pretty clear then.
That's right. It's quite ambiguous. Again, there was a time where the Māori Party, with Peter Sharples and Turia. Oh, again, I'm sorry.
Tariana Turia.
No, she was the Green. She was the Green leader. She was a slightly diminutive.
No. Materia Ture was the Green, and Tariana Turia was the Pāti Māori.
You can see this is the first show, can't you? I've got to switch the brain back on. But the Māori Party of now is very different to what it was. But no, there's no way Winston's going to work there. But of course, if in the unlikely scenario he chose to go with Labour, they wouldn't need Te Pāti Māori anyway. So I just want to really underline to people, because I know a lot of the people here watching and listening who support all sort of political parties, I said, I don't think it's likely, but it is not off the table, no matter what Winston says.
Yeah. Okay, and Te Pāti Māori continue to implode. I mean, up at Waitangi, you've got Rurawhe Waititi, the co-leader's wife, is going over and basically breaking protocol from what I understand, and actually getting in the face of Eru Kapukingi, who's the son of Miliama Kapukingi, who's been suspended from the Māori Party. So, it was all supposed to be love and peace and forgiveness at Waitangi, and in fact, no, there was a whole lot of bad blood. Actually, just before you comment on that, I saw a poll. This was in the Herald. It was actually done by a Maori media outlet, and so it was only about 350 people, but what it found was that, the favourite candidate was Ana Rafiri Maipi Clark, the most junior, no, she's not the most junior, but junior in terms of age, because you've got Harini Kaipara, who's more junior in terms of having just come into Parliament, but she's got no experience at all. It's kind of clutching for straws now. They've really got nobody that could lead the party, and there's no unity there, and voters don't like disunity. And so, as we saw, let me show you the latest poll. Bottom line there, they've just gone down and down and down. When was their biggest result? Was March 25. So, yeah, about a year ago, and they've halved their audience. So things aren't good there.
No, and the fact that, I mean, I don't know Hannah well. Of course, she was the one that did the haka in Parliament last year.
It.
Made a bit of a name.
That's what she did. That's been it.
But it shows you the shallowness of politics these days.
She was also recognised by Time magazine, that once credible magazine, as a influencer or something.
That's part of the problem, is that shallowness. It doesn't matter if it's media or even some people being asked. It's just, I saw this person in the news, or they've made some sort of dramatic performative statement, and all of a sudden they're being feted and celebrated by the likes of Time magazine or our media here, front page to the whole time. But there is, from what we've seen, no depth. I mean, maybe it's there, but again, it's a very shallow dynamic. And I'm sad to say, Bob, you do see that in the other parties too. I'm not going to name names for the sake of time, but the media often just latch on to someone and, this is a future leader, and they just keep promoting them. Whether they've got the skills or the ability is often a secondary question. Okay. By the way,
did you ever have that?
Oh God, no. Being a conservative.
It's okay. It was a rhetorical question. I knew the answer. You're way too far right for the media.
That's right.
Campaign for.
Just jumping back to that haka that, although I'm not even sure you call it haka, whatever. Yeah, so that's John Tamahiri's daughter, who is married to co-party leader Rawiri Waititi. But as you say, I'm not an expert in Pui tikanga, but that's pretty major to cross from one side to the other, very threatening. Yeah. And the thing to note is her husband, so Rawiri Waititi, co-leader of the Māori Party, had just given, I think, quite a conciliatory speech.
The white feather.
And then his wife I mean, she's lucky that someone from that side, where she's apparently to get up and restrain her or push her. I mean, it's just symbolic of all the problems in Te Pāti Māori.
Yeah. And look, it's this disunity, which is a big killer in politics, which is a bit of a segue into the next topic, and that is just keen to just get your comments. So I wrote an open letter to the Christian parties and said, look, for too long, there's been too many parties competing for the same vote, and basically the vote for Christian parties has just got lower and lower. At the last election, 5 parties were competing for the same vote, and they ended up with 1.34 because the voters don't like disunity. Te Pāti Māori is a perfect example of that. I remember when you were in Parliament and they were changing leaders constantly. Went from Simon Bridges to the coup by, you said his name just before.
Todd Muller.
Todd Muller, and then that lasted, 2 months, and then Judith Collins. Voters don't like that disunity, but unfortunately we haven't seen the unified Christian party voice since that well, it was the big high of United Future back in 2002 when quite a quirky thing, Peter Junn just had a excellent TV debate and the worm turned. The feedback from the voters showed that he was making the most, they said, common sense. But unfortunately it didn't last. As you can see, that purple line just drops right away till it's nothing in 2017. Conservative Party flurry there of voters, but look, nothing's landed. And my argument is it's because of the disunity. And look, even the Māori Party don't represent all of Māoridom, and what is it, 26-7% of the population is Māori, and yet the Maori Party, what was, I can give you the figure, what were they on? 3%.
3%, was it?
So that means that 23% of Māori aren't voting for Te Pāti Māori. So it's an uphill battle.
Yeah, and look, kudos to those who set up their political parties and put themselves out there. But, I agree with your analysis. I mean, even if the Christian parties were to unite, to, find a way of assuaging the desires of every party leader and to let one rise amongst them, I think that's one of the big fundamental problems is who would lead this. Yeah. Even if that happened, they still wouldn't be reaching the 5% threshold. And I think the simple reality is just because someone's Christian doesn't mean you vote for a Christian party. In the same way you just mentioned, if you're Māori, you don't have to vote for the Māori party. And, the number one driver of people's votes is the economy, not one's faith or ethical issues or so forth. It's the economy. Then it's the likes of health and law and order. And so I think Christian parties are always going to struggle into this space. And the last thing I'd say, because I've banged on this drum for a long time.
Before you move on to the next one, can I just push back a little bit on what you've just said there? Because I heard you say it on Straight Talk and I didn't get the chance to discuss it further. I don't know if I've ever voted on the basis of the economy, because I actually think that no matter who the government is, they're going to botch the books, they're going to overspend, and they couldn't manage their way out of a paper bag. So when I go into an election, I'm voting on values. I'm voting on those who are going to protect life, who are going to go back to conservative values. So, yeah, I think you're right that the narrative and the media push that it's about the economy stupid. It's always been that line. But is that the main issue for a lot of people? It seems to be the discourse in the debate. But is it when people enter the polling booth?
Well, of course, Bob, you're an exceptional person. That won't surprise viewers and listeners.
Cheers.
Cheers. It won't, surprise listeners that, that's how you've directed your vote. And there will be thousands who do. But we can see and have seen in all the internal polling and focus groups where you ask people to rank what are the most important issues to them. It's the economy, that's true. Way out ahead. Cultural issues, so I'm talking euthanasia, abortion, believe it or not, treaty issues, climate change, like 1 or 2%, sometimes 6% if you're having a good day in terms of interest. And the economy is like 84%, as I say, law and order, health. So look, the research, the stats, the polls are pretty clear. That's what drives a goodly majority of people.
No, fair point. And look, we've published those polls. We've shared those from what's the polling one that we often refer to that digs deeper into it?
Ipsos, isn't it?
Ipsos, Ipsos polls. What is it? It's the economy, health, crime, and education.
Housing's
although I do want you to know that Nancy Margaret, she agrees with me. So there is one other person in New Zealand who votes the same way as I do. So I'm not that much of an exception, Simon. I've found one other.
2 is good. Oh, look, there's plenty who do, but as per your chart of the Christian parties, it is obviously not enough because that would be a much different metric if people did. And also, I could very, very quickly add, part of the problem here too is often people will choose to vote for the MP that they like, their values align with them, and then their party vote goes elsewhere. I've certainly come across that. Not just about my own experience, but as I've talked to people around the country, I'm going to vote for this MP because I like her her values, but I'm voting for this party because I like their education policy or economic policy.
By the way, that big vote for United Future was at a time when the National Party was terribly terrible. And so the Conservative Party went across. It was Bill English's first election in 2002. National got a terrible vote. So Conservatives went looking elsewhere. And look, I guess that's the interesting thing about what we're watching now. If National don't up their game and start meeting some of the calls from more conservative voters, the vote is going to go elsewhere, which sort of segues into I did just want to quickly touch on Australia. So there's been an amazing trend there because the One Nation party led by Pauline Hanson, which has always been seen as the xenophobic, negative party that nobody wants to be associated with, is now way out polling what is comparable to our National Party. In fact, breaking news today is that there's a leadership vote for Susan Lay's position. She's going to be challenged tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, as predicted by our Australian correspondent, Lyle Shelton. So he was very, very happy to hear that because he predicted it on the McBlog episode. But here's the thing, Simon, it's interesting to watch in the UK and Australia and even in the US. In the US, it was Trump against all the narrative. In the UK, it is Farage. And in Australia, it is Pauline Hanson. My warning is, or prediction is, there's going to be a whole lot of narrative around Winston Peters because it's a similar messaging.
Yeah, well, look, I think just quickly, it's all over for Susan. Just before I came on here, one of my good political friends, Senator James Patterson, just resigned his portfolio. He's the finance spokesperson for the Liberals, and I've known James for years. So he's resigned. So look, it's all over for Susan, not just because of James, but it's caving in. It'll be interesting to see who they choose. Look, I think why you're seeing the rise of the likes of Pauline Hanson, Nigel Farage, you've got Milei in Argentina, Meloni in Italy, Japan's just put in quite a conservative populist leader, Trump, of course. It is because there's a massive disconnect between, if you will, what the elites are telling you. So think your MPs and senators and media are telling you, and what the ordinary guy and girl on the street is seeing and thinking. And the disconnect's got so wide that they just don't trust what they hear in the media, and they don't trust what they hear from the usual political parties. So when a Farage or a Winston Peters or a Milei comes in and basically calls BS on things, most people go, great, like what you're doing, let's do it. And Pauline's the same. I've interviewed her before. She's quite funny. But yeah, she just calls a spade, and I think the ordinary voter respects that.
She's actually got a New Zealand connection, hasn't she? Pauline Hanson?
I
think.
Yeah, you put me on the spot there. I know Tony Abbott does. His wife's from Wainuiomata. But
yeah.
He's doing the Google search, people.
Yeah, I am, because Pauline Hanson, New Zealand. No, totally wrong. Okay, I'm happy to be wrong. Actually, I have to another confession. I made a prediction at the end of last year, so don't listen to me as a political commentator. I made a prediction that Chloe was going to retire over the new year because I thought she looked exhausted and tired. She seems to come back with a bit of energy, but she just seems sort of permanently angry. I think she's just fortunate that the media love her and go to her for quotes all the time, and so they give her lots of oxygen, which, they don't to others. Anyway, look, let's move on. We've talked about political parties. Let's talk about the report that came out yesterday, the Sally's report. They do it once a year. It's a great resource because it's done at the same time and you're comparing apples with apples. There's some great information that you can dig into. The problem I had with it is that they found that family violence and child abuse had gone up, and they immediately point at what I say is the politically expedient and politically convenient, especially for left-wing media, the economy, so that they can have a go at the government and, families buckling under pressure. And they basically said that it's because there's been uptick in child poverty, and families struggling, and therefore that is the excuse or increased child abuse and family violence. But when you dig into the data, yes, they are correct. The child poverty rate has been decreasing actually over the last 10 years, little uptick in the last 2 years. In the last year, that top green line, it's sort of been about the same. In fact, number of children in material hardship, there's been a big drop over those 5 years. And then, yes, the uptick in the last year. So on this basis, they would be arguing that if the poverty rate is dropping, so too should child abuse, right? That's the logic of their argument. Here's the problem. Child abuse has been increasing over decades. In fact, I could take you back to 2007 when it started increasing, hospitalisation due to abuse. So I just don't buy that argument. What say you, Simon? I mean, it seems like it's just a very convenient argument to say that everything that goes wrong in our families, let's not talk about marriage, family breakdown, let's not talk about fatherlessness, let's not talk about drug and alcohol abuse, let's just talk about the cost of living and child poverty.
Yeah, I think the appeal to poverty is lazy. That would be the other word I'd add to what you were saying. It's a lazy and tiring answer, because I would bet good money if you were to double the income of those people who are abusing their children, it would still be happening for the reasons you just said. When you have broken relationships and marriages, look, I say it myself as a step parent. We know, broken families, the risk with step parents goes through the roof, for example. And again, I say that as a step parent, doesn't apply to all of us. But yeah, broken families, pornography, alcohol, drugs, all of those being celebrated and normalized as far as they can. Fatherlessness, certainly. Look, there's just so many factors. And so really it just returns to laziness, to, it's just about money. And the other quick point I'd make, in some ways, we've never been wealthier. When you think, I'm not saying in terms of 1, 5 or 10 years, but you think over 50 or 100 years, there was poverty like we can't even comprehend now. And the level of violence against children wasn't as bad. So not only is it a lazy argument, I just don't think it's correct. But I think both of us would say, look, of course we want and would like to see material hardship removed from families. But again, to use that word, it's just simply lazy. And I have to say, in my years in Parliament, that was always the argument. Just about everything. It's poverty. And you just have to give us more money. And you know what? Governments, red and blue, have given more money over the years into a whole lot of areas. And, lo and surprise, nothing changes.
Just a question. Harrison wants to know where to find your Pauline Hanson interview.
That one's actually on RCR. You'd have to go to Reality Check. So it's not one of my regular Family First ones. It was a far more political chat. So you go to RCR in this case.
Okay. Dean correctly says Sally's the closest in actions to Jesus. I think it's just that they do very good social work on the street, in the community. No doubt about that. This is more at a policy level that this report has come out. And Simply Green says, is there a racial breakdown? Interestingly enough, in the child abuse area, unfortunately Māori are disproportionately represented in the child abuse area. Interestingly enough, in the child poverty area, it's actually Pacifica families that are slightly poorer than Māori families. Ethnic breakdown. One of the other things, the big news, that the Salvation Army report was sort of crowded out because the coroner released a report about this horrific child abuse case, one of many, which we average around 8 or 9 a year. And we've done that since 2007, since that wonderful anti-smacking law that did nothing of child abuse deaths. And this was one where people tried to warn. There was a whole lot of red flags, but the agencies simply didn't follow up. And the mother got involved in drug dealing, ended up in prison, and the child was put with a friend whose relative had also gone to prison for drug dealing. I mean, that's an immediate red flag. Drug and alcohol abuse is an immediate red flag for any family. And so anyway, once again, they don't talk about the elephants in the room of family breakdown, fatherlessness, what's going on. And you'll know that one of my favourite people in all the world, apart from Chloe, is the Children's Commissioner. And look, I almost think that position should be scrapped before the Human Rights Commission, and that's saying a lot. But anyway, they went to the doctor, whatever her name is, and asked her about this. Have a listen to her answer to it, and also her description of the whānau of this boy who was killed.
With family violence at record levels and economic stress pushing families to the limit, advocates warn more needs to be done to prevent tragedies like Malachi's from happening again.
Yes, Sam, it is absolutely grim reading, and what it shows is that far too many of our families in whānau are under significant pressure. Life is really tough for them right now, and we know that when households are struggling, children are struggling. And so what we see when it comes to our child poverty rates, those went up last year on the official statistics.
Yeah, so we've already exploded that argument because the rates have been coming down, but the child abuse rates weren't coming down. So the logic doesn't work.
Every child in New Zealand should be growing up safe and well. And when we turn back to the issue of poverty, we can see that when children are living in poverty, we are depriving them of a full childhood. We are depriving them of their full potential. And so the need to see change on these things is urgent. Collectively as a nation, and I'm talking about at the systemic level and then at our community, collective, public at large level, I simply don't think that we have placed enough urgent focus on addressing these things. We haven't prioritised children to the extent that we need to. I acknowledge Malachi for the precious child that he was, very much loved by his whānau.
What?
And actually, it's also for the public at large too. Let's collectively focus on children and make them our priority this year.
Okay, well, 1,000 solutions in that knot. And in fact, it was the family that let down Malachi. So I don't know what planet she's on.
It's the classic switch that progressives do. So the perpetrators are sidelined. So let's not talk about the family. No, this is a collective issue. This is a societal issue. This is systemic. It's the Crown's fault. I'm like, sorry, until we actually begin to take a little bit of personal responsibility in our lives and hold people to account for their choices, going back to what you said earlier, drugs, alcohol, breakdowns of relationships, all of these things, not actually being truthful to the oranga tamariki social worker that actually your second cousin isn't a good person. These are all major factors. And again, as soon as you hear like the Children's Commissioner or woke politicians moving from the individual to this collective notion, this systemic, they're avoiding the real heart of the issue. And not holding the real people to account, which unfortunately in this case is Malachi's family. And to be fair to Oranga Timiri, he's completely overrun. And the last point too, right at the start, again, it's that poverty thing. She's almost making excuses for it. Oh, well, it's sort of okay because, or understandable, not okay. It's understandable because the family was poor. That's insulting.
Yeah. It's insulting to families who are actually doing a tough graft. And in fact, if you look at I've had a look at the ethnic breakdown of just household incomes, and one of the lowest is actually, believe it or not, Asian, who are often involved in, the workforce, lower paid, some of them in some of those jobs. So per household, they're one of the lower incomes, and yet their rates of abuse are low as. And I've always argued and presented that the reason is because the Asian communities actually hold marriage and formation in the extended family as integral, very important. And that's, really important. So, yeah, it's interesting to watch. Anyway, did you have any comment on that? I want to move on.
No, I think it's quite right. And look, we all know families who've grown up poor. Some of our viewers and listeners, ourselves, had poor upbringings, and your parents weren't beating the crap out of us. I just think, again, I just want to use that word lazy. It's a lazy argument whenever they bring up poverty or they start talking about systemic issues. It takes away personal responsibility.
Well, I think it's politically expedient because it immediately points the finger at the government rather than at the individual families, the breakdown, the declining marriage rates, the father absence, and violence in homes being caused by drug and alcohol abuse. So, yeah, it is part of that. Look, we did have a couple more topics. I might just get two quick updates. Firstly, on the puberty blocker ban, do you want to just give us a 1 minute update on where that's at?
So people remember the government moved to ban puberty blockers. The radical group PATHA, trans lobbyists who don't mind mutilating and chemicalizing children, went to the High Court, who said, look, the regulations have to be put on hold. There was then an appeal. The Court of Appeal has basically said, look, this just needs to go to its judicial review. We're not intervening any further. So the High Court ruling remains. So puberty blockers are effectively still available. But there's a judicial review coming in. I think it's May this year. So okay. there's the chance for people with some common sense to make an argument, and hopefully the Crown, the government, makes a good strong argument. Not only that puberty blockers are dangerous, and we all know this from the evidence, the almost overwhelming evidence, but also the government can stress, actually, it's for us, the government, to make these decisions, not radical groups like PATHA and not activist judges.
Okay, but there has been lawsuits in the US, and they're going after the butchers who are chemicalising and castrating confused kids. And so watch this space. Although, interestingly enough, the taxpayer via Tourism New Zealand wants to bring over WPath for their conference in 2028. Hopefully they'll be sued into oblivion by then. Just one other thing that we just wanted to quickly cover. We're watching Australia with interest with the social media ban. Interesting poll over the January, which found that even amongst, if you look at the right there for the age breakdown, there's still 2-to-1 support for a social media ban, even amongst 18 to 34-year-olds. I think we are definitely watching what Australia does. And look, there's new studies coming out. In fact, there's a court case happening at the moment with Meta and Google trying to argue that they haven't been targeting kids deliberately, trying to addict them. That's happening in California, I think it is. Case we really need to keep an eye on. But, for Family First, we're very keen on also having that solution right at the starting point. Do you just want to give us we've got 60 seconds, what that solution might be?
So it's inspired by what someone called Melissa Mackay and others have done in the US. In fact, you can find this on the Family Matters podcast. It's targeting the app stores. Just about everything which young people and all of us access is either through the Apple Store or the Google Store. And so if you're able to add age verification, and I want to really be clear to our listeners, age verification is not, I repeat, is not digital ID. Again, go and check out our podcast. It'll explain it wonderfully. And secondly, that the app stores need to allow parental consent. So if you're identified as being under 16, you then need parental consent. So that's the choke point. And I would argue that's a far more effective way than what Australia is doing, which is, we'll ban these, but not those. It's like a whack-a-mole in Australia. I think it's a very strange approach they've chosen.
Okay. Quote of there's been two texts actually that I just want to show before we finish. Anna says, how about stupidity blockers? And in response, Rust, who said, Anna, that would leave Parliament close to empty. So that is a great way to end the show. Look, thanks for watching. So much to discuss. We tried to get through it all, but we didn't quite. So there'll be some topics we can follow up next time. But Simon, have a great night. And we'll be back next Thursday night, same time, to do more political playback in this election year. Have a great night.